have a few words, and then he's going to turn it over to Terry for her to take us through this presentation.
Thanks, Tom. And again, I appreciate everyone who's live on this call, and look forward to other people viewing the recording later on. Just a quick recap of the goals that I'm looking forward to accomplish in 2020, and really fall into two categories, and that is membership and leadership. And these are two areas that I'm pretty passionate about, and I think that you can't have one without the other. And I think that one example of leadership role is that I've asked all of the state committee chairs to have co-chairs, to make sure they have co-chairs for their committee, so that there's a leadership training involved, and also leadership succession. And I would also encourage all of the local chairs to do the same type of thing, regardless of the committee that they're on. And I think that regardless of what capacity you may serve in the association, we're all on the membership committee, because without membership, we don't have PIC, we don't have legislative, and we don't have PAC, and that would make Tim very unhappy. Is that right, Tim? No PAC, yeah, exactly. So, and also, one of the messages that I brought across is the concept of welcoming everyone's ideas to improve our association, and that's something that we're really going to be pushing forward. In fact, we're going to create an email address called idea@nafa-florida.org, and the whole idea is to make this really easy for someone to share a thought that we can vet, and we can really dig into it, because we have fresh ideas. It helps us all. So with that, I'd like to turn this over to Terry to talk about legislative.
Okay. Hey, everyone. Yeah, I might have. Who just joined? Did someone just join the call? Oh.
No, I don't think anybody else.
Just showing me. Okay. Let me see if I got logged into another place, but I don't know if this one actually has a camera or not. Anywho, all right. So, Tom, were you going to put up the PowerPoint?
Sure. We'll do
I kind of just made a little PowerPoint the other night just to start, just to kind of keep us all on track. So anyway, thank you everyone for being on the call today, and we're gearing up for the legislative session. I think this was the first committee week, right, Tim?
Last week, yes, last week.
Oh, was it last week? Okay. So,
yes.
So just talk about some. Am I able to advance this screen, Tom, or do you have to do it?
I'll do it.
Okay. All right. So, so we're supposed to read the antitrust statement, or is it okay if I just put it up there for everyone to read, or do I need to actually read it, Tom?
That's fine. You can just leave it up there for a second or two. And
okay. Okay. All right. So since it's a regular meeting, this works like everything else. So basically, we look at the legislative committee from two different angles. One is at the state level. Our committee works to develop, work alongside with Tim and our other committee members to develop a legislative agenda before each legislative session begins, and also to be poised to react to bills that pop up that we didn't think of, or that we want to react to in a positive or negative way. So that's where we kind of initiate all that stuff at the state level. And at the local level, we rely on the local committee chairs. Not many of the committee locals, from what I can tell, don't actually have legislative chairs. They mostly have PIC and PAC chairs, and then of course their executive board. So we kind of have to lean on the other chairs to share our agenda. But we would rely on the local committees to keep our agenda in front of their members and to ask for their assistance when it comes to calling their local legislators, maybe people that we need to help co-sponsor or to get things through the session, and to provide feedback to us if they run into issues in their own business that they feel need to be addressed from a legislative perspective, to communicate that back through our committee so we can talk about it and see if it's something we can work on for this year or the upcoming year. So, okay, Tom. The goal of the committee is to seek legislative or procedural changes to better serve our members in their daily practices as well as the clients they serve. So we do rely upon, like I said, the relationships that the Political Involvement Committee formulate, because their relationships are necessary to help push our legislative agendas, because we're going to need sponsors and supporters of our positions, as well as the PAC committee is extremely important, because we always need to have favorable opportunities to get in the door with these legislators, and they always remember who supported them when they were running for office, either financially or through volunteerism. So it's an important connection. So the local chairs should have a well-coordinated effort with their PIC, PAC, and national committee chairs to promote our legislative agenda. And again, any legislative concerns or issues that come up locally should be communicated to the respective state chairs. Our goal is to build through these calls and through our monthly calls that we're going to start up here next month, is to build a larger coalition of engaged members, especially since we're not meeting so much on a local level anymore, but we don't have that many locals, so trying to stay in front of people as much as possible is really important. And legislative is one of our reasons for being. I believe that's why I volunteer in this position. It's important to me, so in my business for sure. So I would like, if there for the locals that do have meetings monthly, quarterly, I'm not sure how everyone's doing that these days, but if they do have a program chair, perhaps it's something we can coordinate with Paula. Is she doing all the programs, or are they getting input from the locals, Tom?
Yeah, she's handling the programs. Yeah, she's handling the programs in those areas where we do not have local chapters around the state, and that's what she's. Plus, she's the exec for Central Florida, of course. Right.
So I know some of our most well-attended meetings, at least in Central Florida in the past, was when we did our legislative days, and it's always great if we can get a couple of the local legislators there to either do particularly it's nice after session to have them come and do a session wrap up for us, and then also have them talk about how NAFA has been important to their success in getting in office, and how we've helped educate them on certain bills that maybe they didn't have any knowledge of. And I know Tim used to come during a lot of those legislative wrap-up sessions, or so I always thought that was a well-attended meeting, and I think it really helped people understand the importance of political involvement and how it does impact, how we can have an impact on legislation. I think it's also important for the locals to figure out, who's involved, who is in the state, who in the state volunteers, gives money, is politically engaged, so that we can make sure that they're using those relationships when Tim needs someone to come over to our side. Who can he call upon to steer them our way? So definitely I know locally we used to put money aside to promote Down the Hill, and especially help sponsor new members. So I think that's really, really important, because it seems like once people go up there, they really understand what it is we're all about. I think it's hugely impactful. The national conference is great too. I think there's usually some money sometimes nationally, but sometimes, do we do anything on a state level, Tom, for CAP conference type meetings, or it mostly comes from NAFA, right?
Mostly comes from NAFA, yes. They typically have a $300 reimbursement for the congressional conference in May, which is the 19th and 20th of May in 2020. They've done that in the past. Whether they'll continue, I'm not sure, Terry, but to answer your question, yes, they do.
Okay. And as far as sponsoring, people on a local level or encouraging them to go down the Hill, do the locals these days, because I haven't been involved on a local level as far as, on the board or anything since all this transition, but do they still have the ability to request certain funds be set aside to sponsor people to go down the Hill, or is that more of a state-sponsored activity now, or if they have some money in escrow, is that something they can set aside?
As far as the local chapters are concerned, our 6 large local chapters, typically they'll budget some money to help get some folks up here for the legislative day on the Hill. Some of the local associations who have disbanded, if you will, as a part of NAFA 2020, do have some funds and escrow accounts that we hold here on their behalf. Okay. And we have a 3-person task force that approves any expenditures out of those funds. Okay, good. Okay. Terry, there's one thing, if you don't mind, if I could interject.
Oh, please.
And yeah, it has to do with Tim Meenan and getting out to your local chapters and local affiliates. There is a protocol for scheduling that. And for those of you who may be pick or pack chairs or local presidents watching this recording later, just be aware that if you could coordinate that through me here in the NAFA Florida office, then I'll get with Leslie Allen, who's Tim's assistant, and she handles his calendar, and we can get that set up. As you might imagine, Tim is busy with committee meetings here in Tallahassee, beginning about now, Tim, right? You're pretty tight. And then, of course, as we get into the legislative session for those 9 weeks, it's very, very difficult for Tim to get out during that legislative time when they're in session. So, but if you'll work that calendar, those requests through me, I'll work them through Leslie, and so we'll coordinate and help you get them. We'd love to get Tim out to you and speak to your local chapter. He enjoys doing it, and he's so valuable to us in terms of flying the NAFA Florida flag and the value of membership when he's out talking about our issues in front of our local chapters.
I agree. I know locally it was always a well-attended meeting whenever he shows up, so I hope we can always continue that. Again, local committee goals, just to reiterate, to get the local members to be educated on the importance of the legislative involvement. And I know when I first joined NAFA a long, long time ago, 30 years ago, one of the things that hooked me was our legislative chair, who was Barbara Elvey at the time. I don't know if y'all remember Barbara Elvey, but she used to have a brief moment at the podium, and she would discuss legislation that was going on either nationally or statewide that would impact us in our positions, and how our state or how our country, our national association was going to react to these potential bills or initiatives. And especially as a young producer, I just found it really interesting to be kind of on the cutting edge of things that are going on in legislature. And I think sometimes we've gotten away from doing that at the local meetings, giving a little bit of a legislative update from the podium, and I just really would encourage the locals to do that again, because I know it really hooked me a long time ago and really made me understand how important it is to be involved and be informed. To me, the more informed people are, the more it sets them apart from their competition. So I just hope everyone, at least who's ever here on their local boards, and we'll try to do a good job of getting out up-to-date information to you. I know Tim will do his session dispatches, once the legislative session starts up. So that's a great place to start. and there's all kinds of resources on the national site of things that National's working on. So, and we can talk about that again shortly. So, next one. So, some of the resources, that our local chairs have, of course, is our lobbying efforts, both, in Tallahassee as well as Washington, D.C. Our Day on the Hill coming up in January. Again, whoever are the pick and pack chairs, I hope you will strongly encourage attendance. I know it's pretty much the full day on the 28th, but if you can get people to spend the night and kind of hang out, to me, that's where you really connect with your other NAFA people, is when you after the Day on the Hill and you kind of talk about your day and get to know each other across the state. I think it's just really important if people can pay for a hotel room for one night or something and make a day of it. It's a lot more fun, and bonds will be built, over time. And of course, we talked about the session dispatch that'll be coming out starting in January, right? And then our legislative victories. There's usually one on the national level on the NAFA.org website as far as our prior year's legislative victories that National was involved in, and then of course in our session wrap-up we have on the final session wrap-up. Usually Tim puts a summary of everything we were successful in getting passed or getting squashed, depending on our position on things. So we have lots of resources for people to stay informed.
And let me just make a comment about that session dispatch. That is a publication that comes out of Tim's office weekly during the legislative session. And typically we're able to flip that and get it out to all of our members in a broadcast email on Mondays each week during the legislative session, plus the final version of it with the wrap up. But if you're listening to this telecast by recording and are not familiar with session dispatch, it's an extremely valuable document in terms of explaining what's going on legislatively, the specific bills, how they progress through the legislature and committees and then the legislature, and just a wealth of information. And I encourage you to read that session dispatch as it comes through each week. We also post it to the archives on our website, so you can go look at it later. They really do a great job with that, and does a great job of communicating what's going on in terms of the bills and issues that impact our members every single day.
I agree. It's a great piece, and I know it takes a lot of whoever writes that in your office, Tim, if it's you or some of your staff. I mean, I can tell there's a ton of work that goes into it because it's full of issues from property casualty, life and health issues to benefits. I mean, it's packed with lots of information. So people definitely want to take time to read through those and keep up on what's going on. The one thing that I do appreciate about Tim, because there are tons of issues that go through the legislature, and he and his team are great at analyzing things that they feel like might have legs and things that won't. And so they try not to waste too much time on getting us riled up about things that they don't think stand a chance. They might sound ominous, but they may not stand a chance. So, we try to stay focused on the big stuff that might have a chance to actually get through the legislature. How many bills are proposed, and how many actually get passed on average, Tim? Would you say?
Yeah, there's usually several thousand bills, a couple thousand bills, and at a high water mark, they'll pass 500. It seems like the last two sessions have been very low water marks, and 200 have passed.
Wow, only 200 last year? That's pretty low.
That's right.
Pretty low.
Yep.
Yeah. So on the national level, if you just go to NAFA.org, and you don't even have to log in, it's all available on the NAFA website. You just do NAFA.org, and on the advocacy section, if you want to kind of see what's going on nationally, there's if you go under advocacy, you can find a lot of these tools. They have federal issues and positions. Sometimes they have particular state issues or things that they're fighting or helping states support across the country. They have their action center, where they're wanting you to calls to action, things that are critical coming up for a vote. They have information on who else they form coalitions with, such as, let's pull this up here. Bear with me here for a second. There's a lot of good information. And again, you don't have to log in to see any of these things. It's right on the main page. But they have lots of great partnerships with other industry groups, trade groups, and it depends on the situation, but they'll form alliances to tackle things collectively. There's a great lobbying team up in D.C. I know Diane Boyle typically is the one we hear the most from, and she's come to several of our NAFA conferences, NAFA Florida conferences, and she's really good. And she's accessible too. If there's something on a national level that we need to communicate with her, she's always offered to be there, to take our input and our calls. So again, funnel those through me, and I'll get them up to Diane, and we'll communicate our feelings about whatever it is they're working on. Again, there's a page out there of the victories that NAFA was successful in prior years, and it's a lot of things that like the Department of Labor rules, senior protections, Retirement Savings Act. There's so many things that they do get involved in, and they participated in my industry, repealing the 90-day limits on short-term health care. So there's lots of things out there that you can see on the site that they engage in. They have GovTalk. That's a publication that comes out. You do have to sign up for some of these. That's where you would need to log in if you want to receive these alerts. They won't automatically bombard you with all these things if you're a member. So they have different alerts based on your interest level. So you do need to go log in and sign up to receive different alerts. And again, there are Gov alerts that come out where they're call to action, where they want us to contact our legislature later and let them know, either support or don't support something. I think that would be something good. Maybe I can coordinate with Paula if she's got, or somebody, to get a blast out to everyone. Do we send those out from the state level, or they just come out nationally, Tom? Like the Gov alerts?
Yeah, those come out nationally.
So it probably wouldn't hurt us maybe if someone's got. Does Paula have the master list, or is that something you guys have? Like if we did a Gov alert, if we wanted to piggyback on what National does, and if it's something that we support and we want to. Yeah, and we can blast that out. Shed more light on it.
Yeah, we can send that out through our email system to our members and our Scipio text messages as well. So that would be no problem at all.
Okay, and then, so then next one there. And I think the good question someone had the other day when we were kind of talking about putting these together is, if you're on the Leg Committee, I like to know why people are interested in being on this committee and what they'd like to get out of it, what they would like to participate in, what they would like to see us do. I mean, to me, I would like to make this committee grow and be as effective as possible. So any kind of input anyone has out there right now that they're thinking of, that they think we could do better, I'm open for discussion. So
and that,
I don't want to be the only one talking.
Right. That's a good point, Terry. You know, some of the ideas that have come forth regarding new proposed legislation or language have actually come from our rank and file members at times.
Mm-hmm.
And I know last year there was an issue that Tim took up for us. It came from Taylor Collins in Sarasota, who happens to be our 2020 PAC chair. But, you know, that's what we're here for. That's what the advocacy is all about. And if any of our members see issues or concerns that could be addressed either from a regulatory or particularly a legislative standpoint, send them on to the committee, and we'll address it and take a look at it. And Terry and her team will take it up and handle it as they see fit. Absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah, and I know our new incoming health chair, Craig Rodriguez. I'm not sure if Craig's on the call, but you know, last year it was sort of a similar thing. You know, he discovered a problem with our medically needy program here in the state, and that people were getting misinformed. And so we're working on trying to figure out how to communicate that to the regulators and how to better serve the citizens of Florida, because they're getting put into a program that's really, I think, not a great program, and there's better solutions out there. And that also came from one of our local members. You know, through his daily practices, he saw a problem that, you know, we're hoping to address on a statewide level, and it should be a real win-win for both the members, or for the patients, and for our clients, and for the state, to get people out of these programs, as well as the hospitals. If they're not having to write off big emergency room bills to help these people cover their deductibles, you know, that's a win-win for them too. So, Tim, do you think, I don't know how much legs we've got on that one, but do you think it would be helpful to maybe speak with anyone from the hospital lobby to tell them about this, and would they support our efforts to redirect people out of the medically needy program into a subsidy, an Affordable Care Act subsidy program, where they're actually going to get paid?
I do, but they got the same problem we do, which is you got to convince a Republican legislature to either put in place a program to sort of acknowledge that we want help from Obamacare, or you have to eliminate the medically needy program, and both of which are probably very difficult to do. But yeah, I mean, we'll talk to them. I think that's a good suggestion, because they're losing money. They're having to write off uncompensated care. So
exactly. I mean, to me, that would be a natural. And I mean, the Affordable Care Act, you know, that was passed in 2010. I mean, don't you think a lot of those legislators have moved on, or don't we have enough new people? Maybe they don't have that stigma attached. I mean, what do you think? Because it's been 9 years ago that bill passed.
Yeah, you could say enough is enough, but I can tell you that it's still radioactive with a lot of legislators, and wrongfully so. I'm not suggesting that they're justified. I'm just sort of reporting on my sort of factual review of the situation.
Okay. Well, you know, maybe if they saw, though, that both the hospitals and the insurance industry or insurance agents know that there's a better solution for people, and that they don't have to have these horrible high deductibles, which do them absolutely no good. And the state wins too. You know, the state's not having to pay 60/40, you know, of the Medicaid cost.
Right.
And the members get way more choice for care than just Medicaid doctors, which are very minimal, especially in the specialty category.
You're right.
You know, they're going to end up in the emergency room even if they meet the deductible, because trying to get in to be a specialist on Medicaid is very difficult. There's not that many of them, so
right.
I don't know. I mean, maybe I don't think it's so much as pushing Obamacare. I think it's just helping people have better care. So I don't know. That's just me, but
I gotcha.
Anyone else out there that wants to chime in here about what they'd like to see the committee do, or get out of the committee, or communications, any input out there?
Terry, I'll give you just a brief input on a meeting I had last week. I met last week up in Tallahassee for about half an hour with Speaker Designate Chris Sprouse, and he is my personal rep here, and I go to church with him, so know him pretty well. So I met with him for about a half an hour with two other insurance lobbyists, and we went over 3 big issues this year to get his read on them. One of which is the genetic testing. That was his brainchild last year that did not go through. And we also discussed the repeal of PIP and AOB auto glass. And here is the read I got from him. First of all, the genetic testing, he said, the genetic testing bill is going through this year. You know, he said that last year he had a deal cut, and Tim, you could probably, you know, verify this or add on or whatever. He said we had a deal cut to only use genetic testing that was in doctors' records. And he said, you know, then at the last minute, Northwestern Mutual said, no, we want the whole thing, you know, and it kind of blew up. So he's a little burned up at Northwestern Mutual right now. But in any case, he said it's going through this year one way or the other. And so one of the lobbyists I was with, Mark Delegal, said, well, who can we work with on your staff on this bill? And he said, me. There is nobody on my staff he can work with. I'm going to be watching this bill. And if you want to make any changes to it, you got to talk to me. So he's pretty firm on that something's going to happen there one way or the other. So that's the read I got on that bill.
Okay.
PIP, I tend to agree with Tim that I think PIP is a heavy lift for an election year. But he said that the Senate apparently is willing to move it this year, and he said the House is perfectly willing to move it, and they're negotiating with a trial bar on a bad faith light reform that might make that a little more palatable, and he thinks it's going to move. He said, you know, we move in the House every year. The Senate's the one that kills it. If Senate wants it to move, it'll move. So that's the read I got on PIP. And on AOB glass, we pretty much know why it got pulled out of the bill last year, and that's that the glass people hired a right lobbyist at the last minute. But he basically says that some companies are fixing it themselves. Geico, for instance, he said they just put, and he said, I'm not sure about the number, but it's something like $300. That's the most they'll reimburse on a windshield, period. So you can have a $2,000 Mercedes windshield, and you're going to get $300 from them. So they've fixed it that way. And he said his big problem is some companies use like a clearinghouse to send the glass work out. The clearinghouse is run by Safe Light, and he thinks that's anti-competitive. So he said we just got to work on that. But he said if we can get the lawyers out of the auto glass business, we can fix it. And that's the bill he's going to be working on this year. So that's the input I had from Speaker Designate. And Tim, I'll let you chime in on any comments or additions.
Yeah, no, I mean, we're not going to beat long-term an incoming Speaker of the House on genetic testing. And really what he wants is not just to limit the use of certain tests. He wants to say that life companies may not underwrite based upon even what's in the medical file. So if the medical file, the doctor orders a genetic test, and it meets the language he was willing to accept, Northwestern or whoever would look at it, but then would say, well, they've got the genetic predisposition to Hodgkin's or whatever it is you're looking at. You're not allowed to change their rate. You have to rate them as if they didn't have that. And that's what I think the sticking point is. But bottom line is, I'm going to be surprised if the insurance industry can beat a sitting speaker for 3 years running. You know, his incoming year and then the 2 years he's in. So we ought to cut whatever deal we can get and go with it. But we'll see. I know that there's some companies really exercised about it. And then I think you covered the other two issues pretty well.
Okay.
Well, and I know they said something the other day about the chamber ranked Florida, what was it, 46th, like worst most litigious state or something like that, or worst to do business in.
Just hellhole was their exact words, yes.
What's that? What was the word? What was it?
Litigious hellhole.
Yeah, I mean, so So, you know, maybe that'll get some people's attention up there in Tallahassee to, we lost our PowerPoint there for some, but,
So I can bring it back up.
oh, okay. So, so anyway, but maybe that'll spur some of this, these bills that are lawsuit happy to get passed this year after that little survey. Weren't we like 46 out of 50 states as far as
Yes. Yes.
business? Yeah. I thought. Anyone else have any input on things they think are going to happen, or things they like to see happen, or?
I think I think, Terry, I think you're doing a great job, and Tim, I think that maybe many of our members don't realize they can have as much input into the legislative process as they really can, and I think that you know, an example was brought up with Taylor Collins this past session, and I'm not saying that I know that Tim talks about it, I know that Tom talks about it, I know that you do, but I don't think that our rank and file members really are tuned in as well as maybe they should be, or as engaged. And I think we just need to keep beating that message, and maybe even maybe putting out some videos, you know, whether it be you, Terry, or Tim, or maybe even Taylor, or something along those lines about how this process works and how we can make a difference. Because the reality is that it only takes one idea that can be vetted and gets traction, and with the use of our PIC contacts and the money from our PC committee, and it all kind of comes together, and through Tim's office, that it's a big process that I think we need to telegraph that message maybe better than we do.
I agree. As far as committee calls, so I visited with Tim's office yesterday. So we currently have a couple of dates and times for calls during the committee weeks. And so if you want to, and it came after I did this slide, so whoever's on the call, if you want to mark that the first legislative committee call will be on Monday, October 28th at 2 p.m. And if you would, I guess, if everyone has my email, if you would shoot me an email that you want to be on the invitation list, in case I don't have you on there from last year, to receive those invites for these teleconference, or for they're not teleconferences, but just for the conference calls. Just send me an email. The second one's going to be on Wednesday, November 20th at 2 p.m. and the next one will be on Monday, December 16th, and we will get back to you on a time for that one. It'll either be 2 or 4. So that'll be to be determined. So we'll let you know well in advance. And then the weekly calls will start the mid-January once session begins. And last year we did them on Friday mornings. I think that worked out pretty well, Tim. Is that probably what you're going to lean towards again, or?
Yes, something along those lines.
Okay.
Are we able to put those dates on the state website on the calendar?
Oh yeah. Terry, let me just repeat those dates. October 28th at 2 p.m., November 20th at 2 p.m., and then again December 16th, time to be determined. Is that right?
Correct.
Okay. Just want to make sure I had them down correctly.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And
yeah,
then
we'll put
again,
them to the calendar, Joe. We can get that done.
Yeah, that would be
yeah,
great.
That's a good idea.
Yeah, I think as we get more and more dates, and because I think part of the goal is to use technology as much as we can, and then if we can get more traction and people going to the website, then we're able to people then can go and get the message, because a lot of times we lose when we have to email out and people ignore the emails.
Right. So so we'll get those out, and again, anyone that's on the call that maybe didn't participate in our calls last year, because I have the distribution list from last year, but if you want to be added, just shoot me an email and I'll make sure you get added to the call list.
So do you want us to confirm, even if we were on the list from last year, do you want us to confirm that we want to continue?
No, just anyone new. Like I know Claire, I think I see like Steve, I don't know that you were on the calls last year. I think I see Steve Ward and Claire and Glenn Ritchie. I think those are some new folks that maybe weren't on my call distribution list last year, if I'm not mistaken. So if y'all just can shoot me or Tom Ashley an email, and then I'll get you added to the reminder call list, and we'll get you on board.
I think that
it's not a mandatory thing that you need to call, but it's just if you want to be updated of what's going on in session firsthand from Tim. It's usually not a long call. Usually we're usually done in 15. I'd say 15 minutes to 30 minutes tops. Usually, wouldn't you say, Tim? I think
Yes.
That's about what they run. Yeah, they're not super long calls, but they're pretty to the point, and it keeps you updated. So.
Yeah, and I think you made an excellent point, Terry, that the calls are very short, and I know that I was like 10 minutes late for one, and I missed the call. I mean, I think that a lot of calls, if you're 5 or 10 minutes late and they're half an hour or an hour long, you can get most of it, even if you're a few minutes late. I think this is one meeting that if you're not prompt, you could miss everything.
Yeah, but the good news is, those. Once session starts, they're weekly, so you can probably catch up pretty quickly the next week if how things are progressing. But jump on as many calls as you can. But if you miss one, a lot of that stuff takes a while to get through the system, so you might be able to catch up the next time. But.
And Terry, what are you planning on using the Zoom platform? Are you planning on using conference calling, or what? What are you thinking?
Well, probably I wouldn't say, because Tim, aren't you usually calling from the Capitol or something? You're not running back to your office to do those.
It depends on the week. It depends on the week. I would say this: the members of the committee, and sometimes these calls are very important to get direction from the voting members of the committee. I understand that we're expanding it, put it on the state calendar. Anyone can dial in, but. So if it's going to be 20, 30 people, Zoom probably doesn't work so well. So I'm thinking just audio at this point.
Yeah, I think because they're so short, and if people run into technology issues like I did today, I mean, by the time they figure it out and get logged in, it could be over with. So I think for the ease of use, I think just a audio call for that purpose, I would say.
Okay, so we're going to be using the state. But basically, you're gonna put that information out. What the dial-in information is then.
Yeah. Tim, your office kind of set that up last year, right?
Yeah, we'll do it. We just use a conference call line, guys.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Terry did a great job in getting those notifications out last year, and at the bottom or within that email, it had the login or dial-in information, as it may be, and it seemed to work pretty well.
Yeah, we had usually a fairly good amount of people on the calls, and and I think people liked being a part of it. So we're going to keep that going. So, well, I know everyone's time is valuable, and I don't want to keep people on here too long. But does anyone else have any things they want to add or suggestions they want to make?
Barry, I've just got a couple of announcements when you're ready, and then I'll turn it back over to Joe to close us out.
Okay. Go ahead.
All right. First of all, thank you, Terry. Appreciate all the work you're doing as our legislative chair. And Tim, you as well, man. I don't know where we'd be without you in terms of our lobbyists and the work that we do advocating here in Tallahassee. So thanks to you as well. Just a couple of thoughts about some things. Periodically throughout the session each year, it seems like 1 or 2 or 3 or 5 of our members will get a little under the collar about some issues that are coming up, and they'll prefer to call Tim directly. And Tim's a nice guy, and he's probably not going to say to you what I'm about to say, and that is Tim's very busy during committee meetings and during the legislative session. And again, if you're listening to my voice on the recording later, Please work your comments or your suggestions or your concerns, especially through Terry Seefelt and the Legislative Committee rather than picking up the phone and calling Tim. More likely than not, Tim's going to be extremely busy in meetings, and he's probably not going to get back to you for a little while because he's doing the work of the association and representing our interests over there. And I would suggest you might be more effective, like I said, of working through our state legislative committee. Let the committee deal with the issues and your concerns. And I think it would flow better if we could address that and handle it in that manner. So not that Tim doesn't want to take your call and chat with you, but he's a busy guy and we just need to leave him alone. And the truth of the matter is I don't talk to him very much during the session. I know he's busy. I know he's representing our interests, and I'll call him if it's vitally important and he'll call me or whatever. But we need to respect his time during the session with our concerns. So
a point of clarification, Tom. So if I'm trying to get hold of Tim to meet me for drinks at 6 o'clock, should I run that through Terry first? Is that?
Yes, I'm his clearinghouse.
And then me. So don't forget.
I'm a social. I run a social calendar.
That's right. That's right. The other thing is just a couple of announcements for you. We do have our NAFA advocacy meeting coming up in Washington, D.C., December 2nd through the 4th of this year. And that meeting is primarily for our state and local pick and pack chairs. Our officers will be attending, specifically Joe Challam and Craig Duncan. And but certainly those of you at the local level who would like to attend, it's open to anyone. But there will be breakouts and workshops for the pick chairs and the pack chairs in Washington. The meetings begin on Monday afternoon, December the 2nd. They continue on Tuesday all day in the hotel meeting room. And then on Wednesday of that week, we will be meeting with members of Congress and preset appointments with them using talking points that NAFA will provide to us on Wednesday afternoon during that prep session. So please make plans to get there. Just a footnote that Monday, December 2nd is considered to be Thanksgiving weekend Monday still by the airlines. And you might want to get those tickets, those airfares taken care of as soon as you can so you can get to Washington. The next event after that one is, of course, our Legislative Day on the Hill on Tuesday, January 28th. And format's going to be pretty much the same, except that we're not going to be having our cookout, our dinner and open bar at the Dogwood House. We're actually going to have it at Tim's office. He has a huge desk, and we're all going to meet around his desk with our Day on the Hill breakfast. No, actually, he's got a beautiful courtyard outside of his office, right across the street from the Capitol. He is the closest lobbying office to the Florida State Capitol, and he's got a beautiful courtyard out front. So we're going to cater in some food, have an open bar, get you set up from about 4 to 7, and you'll be good to go. And like Terry mentioned, it's a great time to relax, chat with your fellow NAFA Florida members, and have a good time with that. But other than that, the format will be typically the same, with the orientation breakfast that morning at FSU and Doak Campbell Stadium. Then you move to the Capitol with your appointments with your state legislators. A thought about Day on the Hill. This is the Legislative Committee conference call. This morning we had the political involvement meeting call with our political involvement folks. And I just would like to remind you that last year in 2018, we had a lot of gaps in those appointments. We had several House members and senators who were not met with by NAFA Florida members at Day on the Hill. And that's something we absolutely need to fix. Tim and I have had discussions about that. Alan Williams on his staff and I have had discussions about that. And we've got to get folks to Day on the Hill to meet with legislators. Tim will go through the talking points. He'll share that with us during the luncheon. I'm sorry, during the breakfast, the orientation breakfast, and give us our marching orders and head to the Capitol with those appointments. But we've got to get the people here to Tallahassee to make it effective. So If you're listening to my voice again on the recordings, please make sure that members from your local chapter sign up for. Registration is now open on the NAFA Florida website. Click the events tab and make your reservations now. Room block expires late December. I don't recall the exact date. I think it's the 27th of December. And early bird registration expires then as well. So please, please, please get your members from your local chapter and other parts of the state to Tallahassee for our Day on the Hill, and let's make it a good one. The next one is our Congressional Conference, NAFA Congressional Conference. Think of it as the NAFA version of Day on the Hill, NAFA Florida version of Day on the Hill, and that will be May 19th and 20th. Terry referenced that a few moments ago as well. And it's another great event put on by NAFA. A full day of meetings on the 19th, and then on the 20th, again, appointments with members of Congress, with fellow NAFA members from all over the nation who will be at that meeting. Typically, we get 400 or 500. In the past, NAFA has had a $300 reimbursement for all members. There's a limit to the number, but if you sign up early, you'll be eligible for the $300 reimbursement for that congressional conference. So those are the most pressing upcoming events on the NAFA and NAFA Florida calendars, and we hope you'll get to them. If I had to pick, I'd tell you the most important one is the NAFA Florida Legislative Day on the Hill in January. We really, really, really need to have a great representation and a great showing this year. So please take care of that. Again, my thanks to all of you. Thank you, Terry, again. Joe, I'm going to turn it back to you to let you close it out.
Yeah, sorry about that. Part of the luxuries of being self-employed and short-staffed, and what can I tell you? So at any rate, I'm sure that Tom already thanked everyone for being on the call. I just want to echo those thoughts and really appreciate everybody's efforts and look forward to working with everybody going forward. And from my end of it, have a great day.
Thank you, everyone. Appreciate your
Thanks,
time.
everybody. Bye-bye.
Thanks.
Bye.
Thank you, folks.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.